About 5,000 enterprises are using us. BMW, one of the largest automotive companies in the world, does 100% prototyping on us. And they were proud to talk about it recently because they're literally like the first concept we start. The hardware has the capability in the industrial Arduino Pro side to go as complex as you want. We make it simple, and then we have an ecosystem of partnerships which can take it as complex as you want. But we always start with simplicity. That's our value, and then you can kind of take it with that ecosystem from there. But if you can have a very simple low-code, no-code approach for embedded electronics, where first of all you don't need to do chip-down design for every solution, you can kind of do a more modular approach, and then you can actually get the intelligence and the AI all the way to the edge. That's the way to go.
Welcome to Forging the Future, and I'm here today in Austin, Texas at Embedded World 24, sitting down with Guneet Bedi, who is the Senior Vice President and General Manager for Arduino. Guneet, thanks for coming on.
Chris, it's a pleasure to have you here in my hometown. Thanks for the drive, and I can claim that we have better barbecue than Houston, but
Well, we might have to arm wrestle for that one. But,
there you go.
No, hey, go Texas, right? We're all in it together. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing at Arduino.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. Sure. I really enjoyed Forging the Future and really enjoyed how you talk about both the current scenario as well as how things are changing in the future. So I think appreciate that. That's kind of the ethos of Arduino. We started 18 years ago in a design school in Italy, and we were basically here to democratize and make electronics easy. And I think we're proud to say that with one of the largest open source communities, almost 40 million users,
wow,
we've done that well for kids, for education, and for tinkerers and makers. And what I've been up to for the last almost 2.5, 3 years is take that same experience into enterprise. And how do we make it really easy for embedded electronics and industrial automation? We're an Italy-based company, but of course global, all over. And I'm based in Austin. So that's what we've been up to.
Well, why do you think it got so popular in the beginning? So 16 years ago, there probably wasn't a lot of platforms available for rapid prototyping and for tinkering and stuff, although some came along, right? But what really made Arduino take off?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it was the 5 founders. The good news was that all of the 5 founders were not electronics majors. Oh. They were all design as well as instruction, kind of experts. They were all teachers in design school. And what really took off is we kind of created low code before it was called low code. And it was a really easy, abstracted way for anybody to interact with electronics.
Low code.
It still is 100% low code. We do an abstraction on the Arduino IDE, on the integrated development environment. IDE is the most popular product that anybody would know from Arduino. And what happened there was really you don't have to go through hundreds of pages of manuals for blinking an LED. Mm-hmm. You could do that with 3 lines of code. I think that really was what people really got on.
Was it a version of Python, or what did you do?
C++ and C. Started with C, then C++. We also do Python now, a MicroPython with MBlock specifically for secondary and primary school. But yeah, I think it was just the abstraction of keeping the silicon, not going bare metal, and making it as low code and as easy to interact as possible. So you focus on the interaction with the electronics and the experiences and not getting lost in the nitty gritty.
Yeah, I was impressed because a couple of years ago, we gave away an ArduBoy. Like a Game Boy that was based on the Arduino, and we customized it some. So we actually got our custom case, and I wanted to put a game on it, but I didn't have time to write the whole thing, so I found an open source game that was close to what I wanted and did some tweaks and actually used the Arduino development environment. Very easy to set up and very easy to jump into it and do the compile and the download. And then the cool thing about the ArduBoy that we gave was not only was it a game player, but it had buttons, it had a speaker, it had a display, and you can actually use it for more than just games, right? You can actually use it as a teaching platform.
Right.
And it turns out games are a good way to get kids interested.
Oh, yeah.
My first real programming experience was writing a game.
Nice.
Although back then it was on paper punch tape, and the display was like essentially a printer, right? So had to get creative on gameplay. So a lot of people use it for MVPs and POCs, and now you're trying to allow people to take what they've done and prototyped, and instead of moving to a production platform, stay on Arduino.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Chris, I think you're asking a really good question, because this comes in the context of reskilling and upskilling of, in today's environment. As you know, there's a lot of people not graduating in embedded electronics and EEs and, experts. Of course, the value, a lot of it is shifted towards the software and the AI. And, what we've realized is that if you can have a very simple low-code, no-code approach for embedded electronics, where, first of all, you don't need to do chip-down design for every solution. You can kind of do a more modular approach. And then you can actually get the intelligence and the AI all the way to the edge. That's the way to go. And what we designed and developed almost 4 years ago now is a new line of products called Arduino Pro. And Pro allows you to get the industrial range of products, temperature, very high-end processors from STMicro, NXP, Renesas, but then allow you to not just stop at prototyping, but at least get to the first few years of your production release of using Arduino, right? So I think that's basically the combination of the trend of reskilling and having easy to use approaches, and the time to market and modularity, and getting a lot of AI at the edge. Because then you want people who are comfortable with AI and can write MicroPython, Python, kind of algorithms, and not worry too much about the bare metal. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I do see a lot of talk about AI at the embedded world. Everyone's talking about edge AI, and AIoT, the artificial intelligence of things or whatever. But can you actually do AI on the Pro chip, or how does that work?
Really good question. Absolutely. So I think, the first thing that, if you think of it, our flagship product is a system on module, a SOM called Portenta H7. You love some Italian names, which is based on an STM dual core M7, M4, just geeking out for a minute.
Yeah.
We do a lot of the operations on the M4, and the M7, the complete core, a very powerful core, is available for AI algorithms, available for data logging. And, today with the real ease of doing this all the way to a microcontroller, not just depending on a single board computer or microprocessor, you could do a lot of AI. We've seen everything from facial recognition to gestures to vibration anomaly detection, all of that done in our, product portfolio.
Really right on the edge without having to go into the cloud?
Exactly. Some of the training does happen on the cloud, right?
Sure.
But a lot of the implementation and running of the algorithms happens right at the edge.
And the advantage is then you can do that offline.
Exactly, right? Exactly. And, we actually took that one step forward and created a new product line, which is a combination of a microprocessor and a microcontroller. It's a Portenta X8, and then it has a NXP chip on one side, a microprocessor, quad core, and on the other side it has the MCU. But stuff like that, it gets very powerful. It can get very powerful at the edge, and a lot of people can then create these compelling business use cases. My perfect example is robotics. Today we have companies which are running the robotics operating system on one side in Linux, while doing the real-time controlling and the microcontroller on the other side, with the combination of AI as well as just Linux applications. And it's possible on a really small, 12-layer PCB.
And so are they're able to use, I guess there's quite a few robotic OSs out there, right? So, what are people using with Arduino on, what robotic OS?
So ROS 1 and ROS 2, both. So robotic operating system 1 and 2, both are optional and available. In fact, a company called Comau, which is an Italian robotics giant, is creating a full educational line of products to train people on robotics just using us. Because, they actually say, okay, create your first robot, and create your first robot with the ROS 2 in that case, the robotic operating system 2. And you could actually use that in commercial applications.
As an entrepreneur, I know the importance of proactive legal advice. Hunton Andrews Kurth has been a leader for over 120 years, offering top-notch support in energy, finance, real estate, and retail. They handle problems like their own. Hunton Andrews Kurth, they get it done. What kind of robots are they creating with that? I mean, what does that mean exactly? People always think like, Terminator 2 or something.
Yeah. I think the first one you start with is a 6-axis arm. It's a pretty simple,
Like a robotic arm.
robotic arm, and it allows you to do algorithms at the edge of like identifying objects, picking a certain object, not picking the certain object, and kind of just train you to it. But it could take you all the way to cobotics. They're doing some stuff on the agricultural robots where you can do harvesting without people being it, which, in Texas heat would be amazing. But, so you start with a simple 6-axis robot, but you can kind of, the world's your oyster in the terms of where you can go.
Seems like we're going at it from two directions, right? Because you have the very big industrial robotic arms that can kill people if you get too close. And then they have the cobots, which are smaller versions that are still, though, pretty expensive and industrial. And then there's going to be a lot of, I think, custom robotic devices created, just like, IoT devices were created 10 years ago, right?
You're absolutely right, Chris. And I think that's the other trend we really enjoy and like. The industrial automation side. So we have this line of micro PLCs or smart IOs, which allow you for the first time to do open source and C++ low code and I won't call them traditional, but the IEC languages like, ladder logic and structural text. So we're mixing the two worlds. And it's been really well appreciated by developers because then you don't need any specialized skill for industrial automation, whether it's robotics, whether it's conveyor belts, whether it's compressors. I was in Louisville, Kentucky last week and with one of our favorite customers, a company called Atlas Machine Company, and they're retrofitting these really high-end Solaire and Ingersoll compressors with a $100 PLC from us. And it's been giving them the condition monitoring and the predictive maintenance that they need. And one other thing I'll say, we've also launched a cloud platform because we realized that to make it really easy in industrial and embedded, you also need the cloud first or a connected first approach. Touching 140,000 users, we're touching 6 billion messages a month. So it's been really, really, really nice to see. Yeah, the cloud has been really well adopted by the community. So that's really good. So I think we see that in industrial automation, in robotics, and also in embedded electronics.
How important has it been to be open source? We've had a few people in here from Linux Foundation and Eclipse Foundation. It seems to be part of your core.
Absolutely. I think, Chris, is very important because, like what Linux did to, a lot of the computing world, where of course you can have certain add-ons which may not be open source, but you start from an element of something which the community collaborates and communicate and makes it stronger. So for example, we have 9,000 libraries now. So, almost anything you can think of as a library, and it's been created by the community. And as soon as somebody is ready to use it in a more industrial environment, we validate it. We kind of have a team which takes that library and validates it. But, the beauty of open source is you don't start from scratch. And the other thing is you're not trying to lock people in for monetization. You're just making the, all boats rise kind of approach. So open source will always be one of the fundamental, pillars of Arduino.
When you're validating that, is that with an eye toward safety and security, or why are you doing that?
More robustness of the technology, because, of course, if a engineer is writing it in the garage, he's just trying to get it done for his little project. But we want to make sure, a good example is what's the packet size. If it's a BLE library, we want to make sure what is the number of, pings per second. Are we really getting into the nitty-gritty of the full technology bandwidth that we have? So we take it one step forward more from a functionality perspective and robustness perspective, and of course do a bunch of quality assurance on it. So that's the three things we usually do.
And where do you find all these libraries?
GitHub.
GitHub, okay.
Everybody is welcome to put any of the libraries on GitHub. We do the same. Even our engineering R&D team, when they make a library, the first thing they do is put it on GitHub. So it's completely open, completely available, source code, libraries, packages, everything is available.
Yeah, that game I customized, I also, of course, it's open source. I contributed and forked it and whatever I had to do for open source, and so it's sitting out there, but very minor contribution. So you mentioned people working in their garage, right? But at some point they need to maybe productize it and get some additional help. Do you see that working in the community?
That's a really good question, Chris. And I think we're starting to see that develop. We launched what we call a system integrator partner program. We have about 65 design houses globally, as well as software firms, where we can, go deeper into creating a custom use case and a custom customer solution. Of course, in that case, like you said, it's more than just using it in a garage. We have asset tracking of barges, we have compressors, we have pumps, we have motors, we have large like Steelcase, the largest manufacturer of furniture in Grand Rapids, Michigan, as a user. But they could not use it without the help from a software system integrator, as well as a design house to create the custom solution for them. And of course, a lot of the time is spent in making sure the hardware is right, but also making sure that the right data is flowing into the right application. So if they want an OEE dashboard, or if they want a CMMS ticketing system to be integrated, that's where we see a lot of help. And I think from our perspective, we fundamentally believe in, one is open source, but the second pillar is we want to enable and empower anybody to innovate. And the software, partners are a critical part of that.
And do you see it mostly like solo engineers creating products on Arduino, or do you see corporates also using the platform?
Good question. So if you think of the numbers, I like to quote numbers. 50 million boards have been sold of Arduino since we started. About 200 million clones, which is also interesting. So there's a lot of open source clones, which we support. About 5,000 enterprises are using us. We were in BMW. We just launched a case study on our website. If people want to go read it. BMW, one of the largest automotive companies in the world, does 100% prototyping on us. And they were proud to talk about it recently because they're literally like the first concept we start. And in some cases, including the latest cockpit of the lighting, is actually being done in production with Arduinos. So absolutely, 5,000 plus enterprises use us, everything from automotive to industrial to... I just signed a paperwork from NASA, and I wanted to know what they're using it for in Houston. They won't tell me, but they said they're using it for something important. So everything from NASA to BMW.
I think it's great NASA has branched out. I mean, when I was a co-op down at NASA 40 years ago, it was everything, since it had to be space qualified, was so ancient. It was like technology from 20 years ago, and it was so expensive to get like certified for space. And so then the displays are like these vector-based green, like monochrome displays back then, and they're making all this ratcheting noise and everything. It's like, it's just crazy. But I think NASA has come a long way in actually trying to leverage what's available. And
Department of Defense is another one. We see a lot of interesting work being done there. Ferrari is another good example. In all the Formula Ones, they actually literally carry a trunk of Arduinos because they don't know what they want to test immediately to find out how to get better. So everything from cameras in the helmet to traction on the wheels, steering, controls. They just use us for everything quick, to kind of get to the results.
I haven't been an F1, enthusiast. I can't say I've watched a single race, but what does intrigue me is that everybody that talks about it talks about how much tech is in F1, all the innovation that they're putting in, the cameras and the data and the monitoring and everything. It's like, I don't know how that happened. It's like a bunch of gadget geeks tried to go out there and start racing cars or something. But
and Chris, I think it's the speed of analytics.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a reasonable fan. I won't say a big fan, but I've attended the last 3 or 4 years in Austin. If you ever attended, firstly, I highly recommend it. Secondly, you will see how every team, literally drives with a 18-wheeler on a mobile data center. There's servers and servers sitting on the track. So they are doing some real-time quick analysis.
They're just trying to eke out just a little bit more performance from the car,
yeah,
I guess, and
exactly.
trying to get so they can win the race.
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
I know there was a startup at one point where they're trying to do something like F1, but with robotic cars.
Interesting.
So take it like one step further where the car is driving itself. So it's like then you're going to maybe put AI in there, and then it's going to go one more level. Now, I don't know if people will want to watch that or not, but it could happen in the future.
It could happen, and that is a good segue. We still do a lot of support of the STEM community, everything from in Colombia and Venezuela to India, Africa, in the US, of course, where we encourage a lot of people to think about robotics. And one of the things they always do is races. They love doing car races and robotic cars for whatever reason.
Smaller cars, right?
Yeah, smaller cars, much smaller cars.
Yeah.
And of course the bots, which are always fighting with each other. But so that's kind of an interesting way because it's fun. But a lot of people build this from scratch. so they kind of get to use, and just get interest into STEM. And Arduino is of course everywhere there, because we kind of help and make it simpler for students, right? So they can focus on the experience and the learning versus trying to fight with the silicon.
Do you do anything with FIRST? Dean Kamen's, a robotic competition for kids?
We do. We sponsor a bunch of robotic competitions all across the US, all across Europe. We also launched a very interesting line robot. It's called Alvic.
What robot? I'm sorry.
A line robot. So it follows the line with MicroPython.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole idea is, you kind of teach the students how to do robotics and MicroPython. It's called Alvic, ALVIK. Highly recommended. Everyone from a 10-year-old onwards should be able to use it. And it has the whole robot with motors and wheels, and you can get really creative with it. But it also has basic templates of how you just get started, which is also why a lot of people like our cloud, because we're just templatizing everything as much as possible. So if you have a micro PLC and you want 5 vibration sensors and 3 temperature sensors to kind of give you a compressor health, we literally have created a template. It's a one-click deployment. Of course, it's abstracted, which is why sometimes you need software design partners, and then you can kind of go deeper into it if needed.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah,
for the grandkids.
Yes, for your grandkids, weather stations.
What?
Like my 8-year-old just started building a weather station with one of our kit. Okay. It's simple, your temperature, humidity, and then because our latest Unos have a LED matrix on it, so you can actually do a red or green.
Oh.
So I would highly recommend that. My 8-year-old just started that, and I hope she gets the bug.
Well, you can hope, but my approach with our 5, and we're now older, was you just keep presenting things to them and seeing what they get interested in. In my case, most of them haven't been that interested in IT, but hey, that's fine. That's at least they got exposed to it, and they did know about programming. And I mean, they also think everyone knows how to build a computer and knows what IP addresses are and everything. So they're actually more geeks than they think they are. But I think that there's so much available now. I mean, when we homeschooled our kids, 30 plus years ago, I mean, there just wasn't anything. Yeah. I mean, I was even trying to figure out how I teach them to program, and it's like, well, you've got DOS on the one hand and you've got Windows on the other, and you're like, I don't really know how to really make this to the point to where they could do something fun and interesting. But so many tools are available now for that.
Yeah.
Where do you find those Arduino projects for kids? Is it on your website? Or?
That's a good question. So we have a project hub on our website. Mm-hmm. It's just projects.arduino.cc. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. Our website is arduino.cc, not .com, because it's a community, But yeah, project hub, thousands of projects. And some projects, Chris, have 400,000 plus views and likes. Mm. So there's some really interesting projects that you can start with. And I think for kids, or in general for engineers, anybody getting used to it, it also helps with problem solving in general, not just even the STEM. But you can do everything from AI to MicroPython to basic LED blinks. Mm. So, again, our mission is to empower anyone and everyone to innovate by making complex technology simple. Mm. So the whole idea is simplicity. And you can then get as deep and as wide as you want.
But how do you balance that? On the one hand, you want it to be simple, but on the other hand, you want it to be these production environments, right? Does it scale somehow in there, or how does it?
It's a really good question. So I think the hardware has the capability in the industrial Arduino Pro side to go as complex as you want. We make it simple, and then we have an ecosystem of partnerships which can take it as complex as you want. The companies like Softec, would be a good example of, hey, I want to do something really, really, really specific, really powerful. I want to change the clock speed. I want to do something in a certain, kind of enterprise environment. But you could go complex, but we always start with simplicity. That's our value. And then, you could kind of take it with that ecosystem from there.
Well, complex doesn't always mean good.
Right? That's right. So you should say powerful.
There's more, sometimes more problems than more complex things are. So you're actually also an active board member and venture partner. How do you balance your professional responsibilities and with your commitment to mentoring?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I'm very passionate about mentoring. For example, I'm on the board of a company which does English as a second language for developing countries. So, be it India, be it Africa, how do you kind of, create this self-learning environment of English, which is a very powerful tool. It's very hard. And I think probably the place which I'm not doing a very good job in balancing is my personal and family life. So, board calls are usually Saturdays and Sundays because, Monday to Friday you have a full-time job. But I think it's what you follow as a passion. And I think I just need to do a good, better job of balancing. What has helped me a lot is kind of really using discipline in calendaring and just making sure that certain days are for board and venture stuff, and certain days are there for day-to-day job. And I think more importantly, as a leader, and I'm sure you do the same, Chris, it's just very important to delegate and trust your team wherever you can, which frees you up from some of the day-to-day tasks. But it's a tough balance.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do it, Chris? I'd love to know how you do it, because you're very active too.
Yeah, I think that you have the right idea. Well, first of all, some people think balance is a myth, right? But I think it's what they mean by that is, not ignoring one area of your life too much, right? And so blocking out periods of time to where you can say this is family time and this is work time. What I always did with our kids was, if well, first of all, working from home was very great. Figured that out before everyone else did, because I could go out and have lunch and I could go back in, or we could do the homeschooling in the morning, and then I would have a different work schedule. But then also, when it's dinner time, you say, okay, from whatever time on 7 to 9 o'clock, that's time you need to be present, and that's when you wrestle with the kids and have dinner and do the bath and bed routine and read the story, and if you need to go and do more work after that, the kids are in bed, and you're either spending time with your wife or you're like, okay, I need to do this, put in a couple more hours because I did a family activity earlier in the day. And it sounds easy, and I wasn't always successful at it every week, but it's really just understanding that, hey, especially when you have kids, that time goes by so quickly and you never get it back, and you really have to carve things out. Another thing we tried was like Sundays were no screen days, right? And it was like, and that applied to me as well, right? And for the kids too. So they couldn't watch TV, they couldn't, play games. They can, I couldn't be on the computer, right? It was just like a dedicated day. So it really is about calendaring. I think it's how you strike that balance.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Otherwise, there's there's never enough time. I always say there's not enough hours in the day or the night. So and I sleep about 5 hours a night, so that helps. I get 19 hours to do whatever I need to do, but they also say that's not necessarily good for you. But my talking about devices, my Fitbits and otherwise tell me that about 5.5 hours is what's good for me and what I've been doing for 5 years, and so
that's awesome. I'm glad that works for you.
Gives me a few extra hours to compete. So what's next in your role as you're leading this enterprise growth? How are you forging the future from here? What do you see in the next 10 years?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think forging the future for us, I think there's 3 major trends that we see that we want to drive towards. One is continue the reskilling, upskilling of the talent. And reskilling, upskilling can happen when you're 12 years old or you're 55, the whole combination of lifelong learning. We want to make it as simple and easy and empowering for you to do industrial automation, embedded electronics, and everything from robotics and drones we discussed. So I think we will continue down that path significantly with projects, education, and products, right? I think the second trend we see is with the AI coming at the edge, what we've done very well in the microcontroller space is also something we need to take it up on the microprocessor, dual core, quad core, Linux kind of environments, and make it a lot more simpler and easier. So we are thinking of a lot of unique products and roadmaps on also taking AI algorithms all the way to the edge, because I think that's really where a lot of the power of the hardware will come in without the dependency on the cloud. So I think that's the second area that we will go deeper and deeper into. And the third thing is we will continue to support STEM and specifically geographical expansions into beyond the Western world. Because today, if you think of it, Arduino is a huge community, but a significant amount of the community is in the Western world. And how do we take it now into the growth environments? India is a great example. We just started our India office which we're very excited about. And, kind of trained a lot of folks in India, Vietnam, Thailand,
Africa.
Africa.
Have you targeted that at all? Because there's so much startup activity going on in Africa.
There is so much startup activity going on there. Also Latin America, Mexico, and a lot of countries, including Venezuela, with all the geopolitical craziness going there. They are trying to build the skill set beyond oil and gas. So I think there's a lot of areas. So geo expansions and helping countries fundamentally get the skills they need to grow, I think is an important mission to our heart. So hopefully that'll keep us busy.
Well, it's such a low cost barrier, right?
Right.
I mean, what's a typical Arduino kit cost?
Starts anywhere from like $15 to $100, so it's in that range. And we can even do a better job in some of the developing countries with local manufacturing to get it even more affordable. But yeah, you're right, absolutely.
Well, that's great. Well, thanks for coming on the show today. I think Arduino is a super important platform. We're happy to be partners, and enjoy the show.
Absolutely, Chris. Let's forge the future together.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
At Softtech, we don't just follow the trends, we set them. As the founder and CEO, I've built a team that excels in delivering cutting-edge solutions in software, hardware, and IoT. From concept to completion, we're the partner that turns your tech dreams into reality. Softtech, where innovation starts.